Welcome back, AI curious folk, to AI Ramblings Daily Podcast, episode 135. I'm Michael Parekh, your human AI guide. It's Thursday, as usual. Things are happening in the world of AI. Today's theme, striking out, mostly in a good way. So the theme, striking out, is, of course, referring to things that are both positive and negative. So a number of things in the news, and mostly at Google, that called to mind this phrase striking out. A bunch of people are striking out on their own in new directions. And then, of course, there's the question that Mr. Market is asking: is Google striking out in terms of its opportunity with all these people leaving? So there are three specific sets of events that I want to discuss as usual, and then give you my takes individually and overall. Number one, Google DeepMind's Demis Hassabis. He's the founder, CEO of DeepMind, and the head of AI until now for the company Alphabet Google, is stepping down as CEO. And his number two, the chief scientist, is becoming his replacement. So this is kind of important because Demis, of course, has been the head of AI across Google, reporting to CEO Sundar Pichai. He's a Nobel Prize winner. He also leads Isomorphic Labs, which is the AI drug discovery company spun out of DeepMind under Alphabet. The model development consolidation, his responsibilities are going to go to Koray Kavukcuoglu, who's DeepMind's longtime technology chief. He takes responsibility for all of the AI model development, reporting up to Sundar Pichai directly. Sundar had positive words, of course, to say on all this. He said, we have to continue to move fast with clear purpose here. We are committed to being at the front and the frontier, which is important because people have questioned whether Google is committed to competing with Anthropic and OpenAI, the two frontier labs. So Sundar reinforced that. And he said, we are super focused on these areas where we need to improve. So here's my take. As I wrote back in May, Hassabis was already stepping up to AGI. He talked about Google approaching the foothills of the singularity. The Nobel laureate founder, he has been moving towards the science from his operational roles for a while. Today's events basically formalize that. So read this one as a succession by elevation, not as an exit. The founder becomes chairman and chief scientist. The number two takes the models. We're likely to see other management shifts within Google's deep bench across its various entities. So this, I think, is the beginning of several things to happen, particularly in light of number two event at Google that I want to come to next in a minute. So all of this also keeps Demis's focus on drug discovery, which has been his primary interest in terms of things like AlphaFold and all these wonderful innovations that Google has done under DeepMind. And so Hassabis is striking out upward. That's my good version of striking out that Demis is doing at Google. Second event, also related to Google, is a number of Google veterans are striking out to found a new company called Discovery Loop, in which Google itself will be an investor alongside a who's who of venture capitalists. So four of Google's most important builders, some who have been at the company from almost the very beginning, are leaving to start their own company. It's called Discovery Loop, and the mission is recursive self-improvement, or RSI. This is a hot new area. I've written about this some in earlier posts, but it's a hot new area. It's supposedly the next big thing after AI reasoning and AI agents, on the way to AGI over there. And the idea is that the models can learn from themselves, that the current models can teach future models in a recursive loop. There's a lot of science that needs to happen here. And there have been a number of startups, some of them with other people from Google and other tech companies that have been founded with multi-billion-dollar valuations. Discovery Loop is now one of them. So AI, basically the idea with RSI is that AI basically improves itself and then automates the scientific discovery process. The key people involved here that are leaving, number one is Jeff Dean. He's Google's chief scientist. He was literally employee number 30, and he's been there since 1999. He helped build much of the best technologies at Google, like MapReduce, Bigtable, Spanner, and the TPU architecture that the Google team has been building. He co-founded Google Brain in 2011, and he will be Discovery Loop's CEO. His number two, who's also been with him for over 2 decades at Google, Sanjay Gemawat, is also joining him at Discovery Loop, along with a couple of other senior scientists as well. And so there are a number of additional details on all this. I'll have as in the write-up accompanying the podcast. But my take on this is that Google people outflowing have been in the news of late, obviously. In recent months, Google saw Noam Shashir. He was the lead author of the iconic 2017 Attention is All You Need AI paper that kicked off the entire AI tech wave, including redirected OpenAI on its current direction. The T in GPT is literally the transformer that Noam and his team of 8 people wrote in that paper, iconic paper. Other people who have left recently, of course, have been John Jumper, who shared the AlphaFold Nobel Prize with Demis Hassabis, who went to Anthropic. Obviously, the other people are Peter Norvig, Google's head of research for 25 years. He joined Recursive Superintelligence, which is another RSI startup. Again, I'll have details on all of this. There's 2 or 3 other companies that have been founded of late with ex-Google people now. And so this is a trend. And the other aspect here is Google is an investor in most of these startups, as is NVIDIA, by the way. And I've talked about NVIDIA basically being a sort of kingmaker, using their immense amounts of free cash flow to invest in a lot of the most promising AI companies further up the tech stack. And so that is one of the things that's going on here. And so again, a number of the key people at Google are striking out. And that is one of the big questions then that leaves at Google. And that's my third topic to talk about, is the Mr. Market questioning, is Google striking out on AI now with all these people leaving? It's a question with a lot of echoes, because this has been a theme ever since AI got started with the ChatGPT moment almost 4 years ago. There was a code red at Google about 3 years ago, right after ChatGPT was introduced. Google obviously then went to work, built Gemini and all the technologies around that have allowed Google to take the leadership again in a lot of these areas, and induced a code red of its own on OpenAI last fall. And now, of course, with the frontier models running away with AI agents right now in AI coding, etc., the question is returned on Google. Is again Google going to strike out on AI, as it were? And the stock obviously reacted negatively to some of these departures and changes, was down a little over 5% or so. And these 3 strikeouts, 2 positive and 1 can be interpreted negative, are raising these questions. So here's my take on this piece of it. I've covered Google's AI's ups and downs for years. I've written about this. I've been generally very constructive on Google's opportunities. I remain very constructive on Google's opportunities on AI. I think it, along with Apple, is going to be one of the core leaders of consumer AI, at least over the next 2 or 3 years, because of their immense vertical stack, from chips all the way up to applications, and serving billions of people daily, whether it's search or mail or Google, or photos or maps or any number of other half a dozen plus applications. And Google has a very deep bench. Sure, a lot of these people are very high profile and they're going on striking out in new directions. But Google is a unique platform. And one of the things about a platform is also at a time of tremendous change and tremendous opportunity, it also attracts people, which gets less attention, people coming in to Google because of the unique set of platforms and the scale at which they can participate. So I think the vertical stack of the company is unique, like at Apple. I think Sundar Pichai has done a great job. He's only in his early 50s. There'll be questions, of course, about, do these changes mean that they'll have to recast a succession plan? There are some articles talking about that, which I'll have in the show notes. Potentially Tom Kurian, who's the head of Google Cloud, maybe a candidate down the road. But Sundar Pichai has still got a long way to go at Google and is currently actually running high, both internally and in terms of the views of the market externally. And so Google, I don't think is striking out. And it's early days. And my read is that they've got a lot of opportunities ahead, and these are ebbs and flows in the marketplace. My overall take on all of this at Google, happening all kind of seemingly concurrently, is that the some of the founders are stepping up, the builders are striking out on their own, and Google itself is leaning into AI in every possible way with Gemini AI, which I'm going to talk about in the Gadget AI section shortly. And the bench of at the company is keeping, it's producing. Yes, some of the people are leaving, but a lot of the people will have a lot more opportunity with these changes. And so stay tuned for additional things happening. Tactically, one of the things that we're going to be watching for is Google Gemini 3.5 Pro, which is their AI coding related effort. And that has been delayed a few months. I've written about that, and we'll see how that progresses coming up shortly. So I still believe Google is striking out in new directions totally, mostly in a good way. Let's now move to the Gadget AI, which also involves Google AI and Google, the company. They're going to be retiring in September something called Google Assistant, which has been their equivalent of Siri for Apple and Amazon's Alexa Echo, which is the thing we use on our Google apps to ask questions of the world. And it answers all, on wake words, hey, Google, it will answer all kinds of questions like, what's the weather, what's the time, set timers, play music, but answer a lot of other things as well. They're going to be replacing it with Google Gemini. So large language model is going to replace Google Assistant, which has been based on deterministic computer science, based on core Google search technologies over the last couple of decades. And it's going to be effective across Google's platforms, whether it's search, Google TV, Google Cars, etc. So it's a big move. It's been a number of years in the making. There's a detailed article on it that we'll have in the show notes. But my take on this is a positive direction. Google, I think, has built enough hybrid technology around Google large language models around Gemini and is now in a position to do this transition. And Google Gemini will now be able to answer a wide array of things, questions, etc., and will be one of the most competitive things serving billions of people going forward. So I think it's a good transition and something to keep an eye on. But stay tuned if your Google Assistant now starts to behave a little bit differently, hopefully for the better. This leads to some of the questions today, as usual. I've been a long-time user of Google Assistant, so one of the questions is what's been my favorite use of Google Assistant? And like most people, I found it, very capable, just like Siri and Alexa, in terms of weather and music and timers and the like. But Google search was generally under the hood, so I've generally had good use of the product on broader questions that the other products from Amazon and Apple sometimes could not answer. So that is my fond memories of Google Assistant. I think it's generally been more capable than some of its peers. Second question is what's been the core improvement that I wanted in Google Assistant? And the improvement is something that I've actually wanted from all of them, and I've talked about them, which is that they all have depended historically on wake words. You say, hey, G, hey, A, hey, S. You know who I'm talking about, each of the companies. And typically, you're generally referring to the device that's closest to you, but it's typically the device that's the furthest out in other rooms or across the room that'll answer. And that's been a frustration. There are a bunch of deep technological reasons for this, particularly because each company uses siloed vertical technologies to build its capabilities. And that's why this frustration kind of remains. And as Google moves to Gemini and Apple improves Siri with AI and same thing at Amazon with Alexa, I fervently wish they would fix this issue of wake words and triangulation on what the source, which device you're talking to. And so that would be my big wish in terms of these devices going forward. So that is our episode 135 for today. I also wanted to highlight Reset to Zero 1170. It's up. It's on recent data, which is encouraging that students in schools are now starting to get more positive around AI. You remember I've written a lot about this, that in recent months, this technology wave, the AI technology wave, has been received more negatively than other technology waves, particularly because of fears among students for jobs, fears amongst professors and teachers around AI being used to cheat. And so the general surveys have shown a negative perception on the utility of AI, but that is changing. And there are a couple of surveys and reports out from a couple of entities, Gallup and a bunch of others, that are the numbers are moving in the right direction. People are getting more positive. It's something that I posited would happen a couple of years ago, but now we're seeing the data. So I'd encourage you to look at that if you're interested. Tomorrow, of course, we'll be back with ARD 136 and Reset to Zero 1171. As usual, I want to thank you all for joining us today, AI Curious folk. Stay tuned.